for the ultimate source of inspiration, knowledge, and entertainment, look no further. Network Kingdom is a unique platform that brings together experts from various industries. Through networking and collaboration, we create inspiring conversations that educate, entertain, and motivate our listeners. Whether you're a business professional, an entrepreneur, or simply someone looking to grow their knowledge base.
Hello, people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I have Petchy with me here today. Petchy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Good morning, and thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So who is Petchy? Let's dive right into it.
Okay, who is Petchy? Well, my full name is Solveig Petch. Petchy is a nickname that stuck with me since childhood because I was born and raised in Norway, but of parents that are Norwegian and British. And so my British relatives struggle to pronounce my first name. So Petchy has stuck with me. It's now also the name of my business.
Petchy sounds kind of cute.
Yeah, it's I can't get rid of it now. Even people like I've known for many years have started calling me Petchy now. So yeah, it's kind of funny. And I am a brand strategist and a designer. So I'm based in Norway, like I said, and I help values-driven business owners to kind of uncover and define the sort of inner workings and values of their brand, and then communicate that out so they can connect with more of their kind of people, their dream clients, and build a brand on their terms. That's what I do for a living.
So when you say values-based businessmen or business entrepreneurs or whatever, are you saying there's some businesses that are not values-based?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of businesses that are driven more by profits than by values. And while I don't think profit is a bad thing, because we need to make money, to keep our businesses running. But if profit is the only thing that drives you, it can become a bit of an empty shell. And so if you can lean on your values and define values that are heartfelt and that you can truly stand behind and showcase out to the world, you can stand out in a positive way, and you will probably find that you will repel a few people because not everyone's going to agree with your values. But what's more important is that you're probably going to attract more of your like-minded people, the people who really get you and what your brand is all about. And that's how you build a really strong brand that has a big fan base, a loyal fan base, and something that will stand the test of time rather than just being profit. And possibly exploiting.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because as a coach, I actually teach people to discover what their values are, what their core values are, and use that in building sustainable relationships and also in curating their life. So I've always been very big on values, and I always say to people that when you are in relationships, both professional and otherwise, when you're in relationships that with people or companies or whatever that do not align with your own core values, it's not really sustainable, and you find that you're not operating in your true self. You're not being your authentic self. And when I discovered that and I actually used it, I actually found out that it works, and you actually have peace of mind, you're happier, and you feel more fulfilled. And it's funny, you also said that you might lose some clients and you might not attract everyone. And it's same thing with relationships. When you start living your values, I always say to people, that's when you start hearing things like, oh, you've changed. Oh, you're not the person I used to know. And I always warn them and say, listen, that's a clear sign that you're on the right path. And it doesn't mean the other person is a bad person or anything like that. It just means that your values don't align, and everyone is entitled to have their own values. So,
Absolutely.
so how do you actually incorporate that with the businesses and all that?
So for my own business, I've learned the hard way because for so many years I was a people pleaser. I always wanted to make people happy. I didn't want to let people down. I still don't want to let people down. But what I was doing instead is that I was compromising my values. I was compromising my own integrity in order to please other people. So that meant I was running my business in a way that was aligned with what other people thought I should do, instead of what was aligned with what I wanted to do and how I wanted to present myself. And so my journey to where I am right now in my business it's not been a very linear journey, we can say that, because I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur, but I ended up being an entrepreneur by accident, kind of twice as well. And what I've learned from that process is that when I started my first business, that was with a co-founder, and I thought that I would find like all this freedom and it would feel so awesome to have my own company, but it still didn't feel like it was mine, and it didn't feel like I could show up as me. I felt like I had to put on a mask and perform to a certain sort of standard and do certain things in order to be perceived as professional. And so that lasted, I ran that business with my co-founder for 7 years, and then it kind of turned bad, and I exited. And then I knew then that I wanted to do things a little bit differently when I started this business, because this business is just me. But I mean, it took a couple of years before I started feeling like I could inject me into my brand. But when I did, two things happened. One is it was a relief. It was like a ton of weight off my shoulders.
Yes.
Everything felt so much easier. And two, I started attracting the kind of people that I light up from like being in the same room as. So instead of doing all kinds of work for all kinds of clients, some of them weren't aligned with my values. Now I work mostly with people who are really values aligned, that I get along with them. I'm not saying we agree on everything, because that would just not be, but like the general thing is there. And that is kind of magic, because then I get to have so much fun when I'm doing my work, and I get to I get to be myself fully also when I'm working with my clients. And that leads to a deeper relationship with my client, because we feel like we can be open with each other. They feel like they can talk to me about anything, and vice versa. And that deeper relationship means that I can do a better job for my clients. So leaning into my values has been a game changer, I would say, for my little business.
Oh, wow, that's nice. And how long have you done this?
So this solo business venture I've been doing for 7 years now. And before then, I was a business owner for 7 years. So 14 years altogether.
So tell me, do you find that a lot of people, because, okay, let me ask a question first. Do you find that a lot of people start their businesses and they never really think about the values part?
Yes, so many people do. A lot of my clients have just started, and then they come to me and I give them homework to do. And I say, I need to know these things about you and your business, because I can't do a proper job if you don't tell me what you believe in and what you stand for. And why are you here? Why does your company exist? Why does your business, why did you start it? I need to know these things, because that's what I take and translate into like the visuals and the brand identities and all of that. And so many times my clients, after going through the homework, often they don't want to do the homework because they're like, oh, is this one more thing I have to do? But they come back and they say, you know what, I had an epiphany. I just like that. This was such an eye-opener, because you made me think about things that I hadn't wanted to think about before.
Absolutely. Yeah. For a second, it's either they're thinking because they've never really given it a thought, or they just reel out some values. And when you dig deeper, you find out that the values you think you have, like I call them aspirational values, but they're not really, your values. So that's amazing. I'm happy to hear it from someone else, and I'm happy to see that people are incorporating it into their business. So, I mean, what was the first business that you did?
It was in the design world as well. So I've been a designer for over 20 years now. So I did a stint in corporate, like most people do after they graduate. And then the company that I was working for closed down. And I had to do something else. And that's when we founded that business. So I've been in the design industry all along.
You said by accident. So wasn't exactly a smooth ride.
No, I guess you can say it wasn't, because at the time when I lost my job, and I panicked, I did, because I was a single mother at that time to a 2-year-old. He's 17 now. But like right then it was like, I am the sole breadwinner for my little family, which was just me and him. And that was really, really scary, actually, to go out and become a business owner with no safety net. That was
wow. And bold.
Rocky.
Took a bold step.
Yeah, though I didn't really feel like I had a choice, because I live in a very small town now, and there wasn't really anywhere else that I could do the job that I was trained to do. That was the only agency in town at that point. And so like I said, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I kind of had to. It was that, or it was do something completely different that would suck my soul out, because it wasn't in my heart to do.
Awesome. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
So, I mean, you did say something about misfits.
I did.
Because I read that, and we've been talking, and I've been trying to place where the misfits fits in, because I don't see a misfit.
Well, I've always been a bit of a misfit. I always felt like a misfit. So when I was growing up, Have
you been, or have you felt like?
No, I think maybe I've felt like, but also I think I was at some point, because I was very different to other people who were like surrounding me. And so at that point, I was a misfit. But now that I'm finding more and more people that are aligned with my values and who accept me for who I am, I feel more like, okay, I'm not a misfit anymore, maybe, but I can feel like a misfit in certain situations, when I'm with people who don't get me, or who,
generally when you're in a place where you feel like you don't fit in, you would be a misfit. But when you hear the word when I hear the word misfit, I'm expecting to see all sorts of misfits. So
yeah, I guess I wrote that because I've always struggled to fit into society's slightly sort of narrow expectations. Like, what does it look like to be professional, or how should you behave? So I often found myself not conforming and not fitting into what everybody else was expecting me to be or look like or do.
Okay, so how was it then? And I mean, how did you cope? How did you find yourself there? How did you cope being?
Oh, well, that's taken most of my life, to be honest. I mean, I was an outsider and a loner from childhood. So all throughout my school years, I was that kid that everyone picked on for some reason. I mean, I was short and I was chubby. I had glasses and freckles, but I couldn't really understand like why they would pick on me. I think they just found someone to pick on. And so that continued throughout my school years until college. And that kind of did something to me, because I felt like I was never good enough. And instead of like
psychologically.
Yeah. So because I didn't have many friends, I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of arts. Like I kind of, my books and my paint and my colored pencils, those were kind of my friends. back then. And so I always knew that I wanted to do like something in the creative field. So that's, I think that's where it sort of stems from. But what it did, feeling like I never belonged, it did like I felt long into adulthood, I felt like I was never good enough, and that I couldn't just be me because that wasn't acceptable or there was something wrong. And I don't think it was until I was approaching 40, a couple of years back, that something really started to shift. Like I'd started getting fed up with this for a long while, and I started sort of quietly rebelling against this a while back. But then, I could see my big 40th birthday in the horizon, and I was like, I'm too old for this. I can't hide who I really am anymore. I need to just embrace who I am. I need to, I'm an introvert. So what? That's fine. And I'm going to embrace that. And it's liberating when you finally are able to do that. But also it's a journey, because there are still times where someone will say something that makes me doubt myself. And then I kind of want to crawl into my little cave again. But then I tell myself, no, because you're gonna model this to other people who feel like outsiders. So I think that's why I really want to help people who are quietly rebellious. And I say this with quotation marks, because it's so important for me to help these people to find their voice. So when someone says rebel, you kind of think of this outrageous personality, going on a rampage, shouting really loudly about what they care about. But I'm not that person. I don't shout about things, but I care about things. And so that's why my work in recent years, it's shifted, because I want to help more people to find that voice, and the confidence to just build a brand and a business that feels good to them.
So at that point, and I'm going back to that point, at that point, do you think that's what made you become like a people pleaser? Do you think perhaps that contributed?
Yes, I think that was a huge contributing factor, because once you've been told year after year that you're not good enough, no matter what you do, you're not good enough. And if you do something that you think is good, and then you're knocked down and they turn it and use it against you, after a while you start to believe that. And then carrying that into adulthood it's not just in like my business, but in personal life as well, in relationships, and like trying to fit in and be someone that you're not, to mold yourself to fit that other person. It's not good, because you're pretending to be someone you're not, and so it's going to crack at some point. I think it definitely stems from childhood.
Wow. So I mean, in those days, I'm trying to understand here what you were thinking. In those, while you were in that situation, did you always know that I really shouldn't be here and I really shouldn't feel like this? Or did you suddenly start realizing it and then start digging deep?
Oh, that's an interesting question, actually. Excuse me. Oh, sorry about that.
That's fine.
I think as a child, I grew up in a very small place, an island off the coast of Norway. So not very many people. It was a very small school, and it's really easy to stick out, and you don't have a big pool of people to connect with. Yeah. And so, something in my throat. I'm sorry about this.
Sorry about that.
Hopefully you can cut that out in post-production. So when you don't have a huge pool of people to sort of compare yourself to, if you're slightly different, then you think that it must be you, it must be me. Because I didn't have anyone to model being different, like to what everyone else was doing. And that shifted as I moved away. I was 15 years old when I moved away from home, because living in a small rural community like that, we didn't have a college. So I had to move to the nearest town to go to college, to get an education. And that was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because at that point, and I mean, when you're 15, you're right in the middle of your formative years, you're like, you're learning and you're growing into yourself. And just to be able to expand my network and see a lot of other people and connect with other people who have felt more aligned with me, that was when things started to shift. And I started to finally sort of find my people, which was nice. So
Your tribe.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So now when you started the journey and you started rediscovering, I would like to use the word rediscovering yourself and accepting yourself for who you are, how did the people around you respond?
Well, the people that I had around me responded well, because they are the people I've chosen to have around me. So my closest people,
Okay, let me rephrase.
I think they were happy.
The people that were around you in the past, so the people that were in the place where you were not meant to be, at the time you were shifting and pulling away. And I mean, I know that sometimes pulling away is not like you wake up and say, oh, Petchy, I'm not your friend any longer. But you just find out that because you're living your values, you really don't have anything in common. So they just start dropping off naturally. How did they react?
Well, I didn't have many friends, to be honest. So it was more like a clean break. I moved away and I never thought about them again. So I don't know how they reacted, to be honest.
So there was no Petchy, where have you been? Petchy, we don't see you often, even though you were an introvert. Oh, awesome. So it was like a clean break.
It was, yeah. I mean, in adulthood, I bump into people, but it's more of a like, oh, hi, hello, how are you? And then, just the normal sort of niceties that you say when you meet someone that you've known way back. But I don't have like a relationship with any other people that I went to school with, for instance.
So what would you say if you were going to advise anyone or give anyone tips who has found themselves in that position? And honestly, I think a lot of people are in that situation, just that sometimes you don't realize, the way I try to explain it is that a lot of us are not living in alignment with our values, and we're blaming every other thing. So sometimes we're blaming our mood, sometimes we're blaming the situation in the country, sometimes we're blaming the economy. I remember then I used to just go out and I would come back and I feel so drained. And I couldn't understand why I felt drained. I could not understand why my mood would change, considering I had a supposedly nice conversation with someone, until I realized that because it wasn't aligned to my values, those things were sapping my energy. So I was constantly drained, So what tips, would you give anyone who's in that situation, and any telltale signs, like how can you begin to even probe yourself, find out if you're in a situation like that?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think also some people don't know that they're in that situation, or they're blind to it because they don't want to be that person who, they so strongly want to be the person but I think it has to start with asking yourself, like, what do I want? Like, if I leave everybody else's expectations at the door, what do I want? And then try to lean into that. So after I split with my ex-partner, I had a long period where I was single on purpose, because I think I needed to find, or I know that I needed to find out what I wanted and who I was when I wasn't sort of depending on someone else or conforming to fit into someone else's thoughts about what I should be like. And I had to learn to be content on my own, alone, just with me, and to find happiness without having someone else to provide me that happiness. And I think that's one way to start that journey, is to look inside, take an introverted look at, who are you really, and what do you want? What makes you happy? I think it has to start there.
What were a few things you did to find that happiness on your own?
Well, I started to look at what I enjoyed doing, like what kind of hobbies do I really enjoy doing?
Makes you happy?
Yeah, what makes me happy, and like who do I want to surround myself with? Because that also has a big impact. So if you have a huge circle of friends, but only like say 2 of them make you truly happy, and the rest of them are just like making demands or draining you of energy, is it really worth to cling on to those friendships if it's making you feel bad? Isn't it better to nurture the ones that feel good? Lean into what feels good.
Awesome. So, before we wrap up, taking it back to what you do now, how do you implement this in the business?
Well, I'm actually leaning more and more into it now. I've recently gone through I'm in the middle of a repositioning process for my own brand, and I was like, what is it? Like, what's going to be that thing that people are going to resonate with, that are going to draw people towards me? And it kind of just clicked. I need to use my lived experiences and bring that into my business and be open and transparent about it and talk about it more. So for instance, a lot of my clients have said, for years they've said that, you've got this ability to kind of know what we need, even when we haven't said it to you. And a lot of people think that, oh, this is very sort of woo and sort of spiritual, but to me it's not. It's just that for a lifetime I was in a corner observing the room. I was always like reading people's body language and trying to anticipate what would happen, so that I could avoid, or I could leave if I could see that someone was going to come up and do something bad to me, or say something or hurt me. And so now I'm using that, because that kind of gave me that ability to read people and really read between the lines of what they're saying. And bringing that into my business is kind of cool, because I've taken something that it was a result of pain, but I've taken it and now I'm using it as a tool, and I'm using it for good in my business. So, yeah.
So, okay. So finally, before we go, when you're working with people, I know you said you give them like the homework and they go and they answer all sorts of questions, which I'm sure includes what their values and the values of their company is. How do you kind of tie it into their business, or how do you strategize this with that?
I love that you asked that, because having values on paper is no good if you don't put it into practice and actually do things about them. And I like to say that, so I work with not just values, but also the entire brand core and the brand strategy beforehand. But if we keep it to values, if you just write your values on a piece of paper, stick them in a drawer, they're no good. And there are so many ways that you can take those values and turn them into tools in your business. So for starters, your values are like a compass. So if you come up against really difficult decisions, or something goes wrong and you need to navigate yourself out of a bad place, it's really nice to have your values there to kind of lead you on the right path. Because then when you are thinking about how to respond to a situation, you can always think, okay, so this is what my gut is telling me to do. This is what my values are telling me to do. Okay, so which, I need to follow that so that I can feel good about my decision afterwards and sleep well at night.
Serves as a guide. I agree with you. I actually
and serves as a very big guide.
It brings it to your consciousness that, oh, this is a core value of mine, so I have to, yeah.
And also I think people now are just so savvy. They know when you're saying one thing and doing another. So just bringing your values into everything that you do as well. You can't say one thing and do another thing.
Absolutely. Awesome. So thank you, Petchy. It's been an amazing time with you. And I have to go back and look at my values for my company and make sure that I'm living those values and my company's living the values as well.
I'm sure they are. I can't imagine not. Having spoken to you now, this was a brilliant conversation, and I feel like we're definitely values aligned. So I'm pretty sure you already have good values in place for your business.
Same here. Thank you so much. So guys, you need to reach out to Petchy, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about values over and over again. So there you are, one more person talking about it. Thank you so much, Petchy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Okay guys, I'm out.
You've been listening to Network Kingdom with Omo Obulor. Remember, if you cannot see where you're going, ask someone who has been there before.